Come closer, friend. The night is thick and the wind has a bite to it, but our fire is warm, and the woods, for now, keep their distance. Take a seat. There's room enough for one more. Out here, beneath these ancient trees, stories cling to the shadows like mist. Some are meant to be warnings. Some are just meant to keep you company till dawn. Rest your legs. Feel the heat in your hands. And listen close. For in these wild places, the line between myth and memory is thinner than you think. Some stories echo through the trees. Others crawl out of them. Tonight's tale comes from the mist-draped hollows of the Ozarks, where shadows breathe and something ancient stalks the silence. But this isn't any campfire story. Tonight, SamHain's Campfire Chills teams up with the haunting pen of the Paranormal Poet to bring you not one, but 4 encounters with the legendary Ozark Howler. 4 tales, 2 voices, 1 nightmare. So stoke the fire, hush your breath, and listen carefully. Because once you've heard the howler's cry, you may never hear silence the same way again.
To whoever comes across this story, I want you to know the Ozarks are not for the faint of heart, and I'll tell you why. My name is Dave, and I am a real estate agent. It's a lot of driving, handshakes, open houses, and rejection, and some days it just eats at you. That week had been pretty brutal. Every deal fell through. Every smile felt so fake. So I packed up my gear and headed to the one place that always helped me breathe, my grandfather's old cabin, deep in the Ozarks. I hadn't been there in years. It's remote, no plumbing, no electricity, no cell reception. Just pine, rock, and silence. Just my kind of therapy. I got there late afternoon. The trail in was overgrown, barely visible in spots. But when I finally saw the old cabin tucked in the trees, something in me relaxed. It was exactly as I remembered, leaning a little to the left, porch creaking when you step on it. A stubborn part of me always felt safer out there than in any neighborhood I've ever sold a house in. The sun dipped behind the hills. I boiled water, made some freeze-dried chili, and sat on the porch as darkness took over. No lights for miles, just stars and tree silhouettes. I turned in around 11, got my sleeping bag set up on the old cot, lit a single lantern, and cracked open a paperback I found in the drawer. One of those dusty westerns my grandpa loved. The wind outside had picked up. It was nice, making the wood whisper against the cabin walls. This is where things began to take a turn. At first I thought I was imagining the sounds, like shuffling, dragging maybe, soft but deliberate, not the quick scurry of a raccoon, or the cautious steps of a deer. This was heavier, much slower. I sat up in bed, ears perked and ready for the next action. Nothing. Then, a deep, awful cry from the tree line. Not a coyote, not a bear, something I've never heard before. It shook something inside my chest. I fumbled for my headlight and grabbed my grandpa's old 12-gauge off of the wall and loaded it with 2 slugs, and cautiously opened the door. With the light on and the gun loaded, I scanned the tree line. Not a single thing in sight. I slowly lowered my weapon, and at that moment, a pair of glowing ember eyes flashed as it crested over the hill. This was 2.5 feet off the ground, and it seemed as if it wanted me to acknowledge it, but not harm me in the process. Of course I didn't know, and I wasn't going to find out, because upon seeing the eyes, I retreated into the cabin and slammed the door. Whatever this thing was, I didn't want it stalking my grandpa's property, so I went to the window, opened up the blinds, and there it was. It hadn't moved from last I saw it. Still glowing, faint orange, perfectly spaced, and then, just like that, they slowly backed up out of sight. I did what I could to calm myself down, but the only thing on my mind was that roar. The only thing that made me feel better was sleeping with my grandpa's gun in arm's reach, ready to put one right between his glowing eyes. I didn't sleep well that night. I was relieved when the sun had finally rose. When the sun finally crested over the hill, I stepped out to silence. No prints, no broken branches, just forest. I didn't stay for breakfast. I packed up everything in under 5 minutes and was on the road by 7. Hadn't been back since. I decided that once I made it home, I would find some sort of explanation for it. Some call it the Ozark Howler, a cryptid, part cat, part bear, part hellhound, depending on who you ask. Some say it's got horns. Others say it screams like a woman being torn apart. But the eyes I saw, they were real. And that howl, that wasn't a story. Something is out there in those woods. And it knew I was there. My father always told me, even if you don't believe in urban legends, respect them nonetheless. Oh, how I wished I listened to that old man. It all started July of last year. The weather was warm, the time was just right, so I put in my hours for the week and decided to take my son on a little picnic in the Ozark Mountains. His name is Caleb. He's 13, quiet kid, sharp eyes, big into wildlife books. He's always been more observant than most. I should have paid more attention to that. We drove out to a clearing near an old trailhead I used to camp at when I was a kid, just a couple miles into the Ozarks, the kind of place where trees grow close and the shade stays cool even in summer. I brought sandwiches, chips, and some of the weird sodas he likes. We laid out the blanket, sat down, and just enjoyed the nature all around us. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about deadlines or back pain, just Caleb. By the time we made it out there, it was already 5 p.m. The sun was slowly starting to crest over the horizon, creating that beautiful pink sunset hue in the sky. We spent about 40 minutes just relaxing in nature, talking to one another, eating the various snacks that I brought along for him. That's when it began to get dark. And this is when the part of the story changes from heartfelt to horrifying. Suddenly, Caleb's attention was focused on something else in the forest. He caught a scent. He described it as pennies. As a hunter myself, I knew what that was. Blood, probably from a dead animal nearby. Suddenly, I was smelling it too. The smell made him nauseous, but I was used to it. Something in my stomach was telling me that something was deeply wrong. As a hunter, I knew that instinct was usually correct, so we packed up as much as we could and began making our way back to the truck. As we began walking back and retracing our steps to the truck, I noticed the birds and even the crickets that were starting to sing. They all went silent, as if they were genuinely afraid of what was in the area. Further up the trail, I turned my head to the sound of a branch snapping deep in the shrubbery. Me and Caleb picked up the pace. Along the way, Caleb took a hard fall. I knelt down beside him to see if he was okay, and when I did, the deepest growl I had ever heard came from the shrubbery right in front of me. This was deeper than any growl I had ever heard before. I I slowly stood back up, grabbed Caleb's arm, and ran straight towards the truck. Once we safely made it to the truck, I slammed the door, hit the gas, and didn't stop until we hit the highway on the way home. To this day, I still don't know what that was. I consulted with a few friends of mine who had been hikers in that area. Some of my friends even told me that the growl that I heard belonged to a cryptid called the Ozark Howler. Now, I wasn't one to believe in cryptids, but I do know what I heard that night. One thing is for sure, I'm not going to be going back to the Ozarks anytime soon.
They say when the sun sets over the Ozarks, shadows come alive with secrets older than man. But deep in those silent woods, something waits. Something that howls with a voice that can shatter your mind. Tonight, we hear the tale of the creature they call the Ozark Howler, and pray you never hear its cry in the dark. Two hikers, Chris and Jake, set out one early spring morning to conquer the Hollow Trail, a path winding through dense oak forests and ancient limestone bluffs. Locals warned them about the fog that settles there at dusk, but neither paid much mind. They were seasoned hikers, confident in their steps and gear. As the afternoon sun began to slip behind the ridges, an unsettling silence spread through the woods. Even the insects seemed to vanish. The deeper they walked, the heavier the air grew, thick with the smell of moss, damp earth, and something else. Something sour, like spoiled meat carried on a stagnant breeze. It started with a sound, a low, throaty growl drifting between the trees. At first it dismissed it as a feral hog, but then came the howl. The howl was unnatural, deep and rumbling, rising into a guttural shriek that echoed through the hollow, vibrating through roots and stone. It felt wrong, as if it didn't belong in this world. A sound designed to cripple the mind with fear. Jake and Chris froze. The dying light caught movement ahead on the trail. There, blocking their path, was a creature neither man could comprehend. His body was massive, covered in coarse black fur that clumped with dirt and rot. Its head was like that of a monstrous cat, elongated jaws, revealing jagged teeth, slick with saliva. Curling from its skull were twisted ram's horns, ridged and splintered with age. Its eyes glowed an ember red, smouldering in the gloom, unblinking, fixed on them with sentient malice. They didn't scream. They couldn't. Their bodies locked in silent terror as the thing stepped forward. The ground crunching beneath split hoofs that ended in hooked claws. Its breath reeked of death. Another howl burst from its throat, louder, vibrating the trees around them, as if the forest itself shivered at its command. Suddenly, their paralysis broke. Jake grabbed Chris's arm and they ran, stumbling and tearing through undergrowth, feeling every second as though they'd been snatched back into those fanged jaws. The creature didn't follow. Or perhaps it only watched, amused by trembling prey fleeing its domain. They didn't speak a word until they reached their car, gasping in the final light of dusk. And the forest behind them stood silent once again, as though nothing had ever stirred within its shadows. To this day, neither man will set foot in the Hollow Trail again, and when locals hear a howl echoing through the Ozark Hills, they close their doors tight and whisper prayers into the dark. Because there is something in those woods, something ancient, with eyes like burning coals, horns curling from a nightmare, and a howl that can strip away the sanity of any soul who dares to listen too closely. They were just two brothers on a weekend hike. Nothing more than that. No ghost hunting. No cryptid chasing. No looking for trouble bravado. Just a couple of Missouri boys trying to reconnect after life had pulled them in opposite directions. Tyler was the older one, quiet, level-headed, former Eagle Scout. Mason, the younger, had always been the curious type, constantly stepping off trails to explore moss-covered rocks and twisted roots that looked like bones. They chose a quiet stretch of trail deep in the Boston Mountains, thick with pine and mist, where phone signals died and only the wind dared whisper. On their second night, the forest changed. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was oppressive. Too silent. Not even the usual chirps of cicadas or the hoots of owls. Just the low, heavy hum of something waiting. Around midnight, Mason shook Tyler awake. Something's moving in the woods. Tyler listened. There, distant but distinct, heavy footfalls, dragging. Too slow for a bear, too deliberate for a deer. Then, the sound that haunts them both to this day. A howl, long, guttural, like a dying elk gargling its last breath through broken glass. They froze. The air grew thick with rot, like a carcass left to bloat under the summer sun. The tense fabric rippled from something brushing against it. A growl low enough to vibrate through the ground followed. Tyler dared to unzip the flap just an inch. Just enough to see. He wishes he hadn't. Red eyes, burning, set far apart, too far for any animal. And horns, not antlers, horns, like a devil from some old preacher's nightmare. Black fur bristled in the moonlight. Its breath steamed in the cold night air, though the summer heat clung to their skin like sweat. It didn't attack. It just stared and smiled. Then it howled again, louder, and the trees themselves seemed to recoil. By dawn, the brothers ran. They left behind the tent, the packs, even their phones. All they took with them was the silence and the knowledge that something watches in the Ozark woods, and sometimes it smiles. So next time you find yourself alone in the Ozarks, if the forest goes quiet, if the air turns still, and if you hear it howl, don't look into the trees, because it's already looking at you.